Okay, so in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at something called Android 12L. Now, that L is very important for the Raspberry Pi 4, so let's dive straight into the video. So, first of all, you may ask, well, what is the difference between Android 12 and Android 12L? Well, according to information I found online, Android 12L is a special feature drop to Android 12 that makes the experience much better for larger screens, such as Android tablets. Its goal is to improve multitasking and just make the Android experience more powerful and more usable by the power user. So this is something that is kind of interesting for the Raspberry Pi 4. Since you know, the Raspberry Pi 4, we usually use the Raspberry Pi 4 with a mouse and keyboard, not with a touchscreen. I mean, some people do, but I would think that the majority of people do use a mouse and a keyboard and a monitor, so Android obviously doesn't give the best experience. So hopefully, this version of Android will just allow us to use Android a little bit better on our Raspberry Pis with our keyboard and mouse, and this version is brought to us by Konstakang. He creates amazing Android images for the Raspberry Pi 4. They are very professional, and they just seem to usually work pretty well. He gives good documentation, and overall, they're just a really useful little tool to have on the Raspberry Pi. So first of all, I will be breaking this video into different parts, and you can go down to the time step where I show how to install this on your Raspberry Pi 4. But for the beginning part, I will be showing you guys the overall UI, how it feels in performance, and different things like that. So let's dive into the different, like, what does the desktop feel like? So as you can see right now, you may not notice much. It looks pretty much like normal Android, but if I go right here, you can see that our buttons, instead of being in the middle like normally they would on Android, they're on the side, which is interesting. But let's say I went ahead and I opened up the Files application. So when I open up the Files application, you can see we basically have a taskbar right here that looks something like Chrome OS or even Windows would have, like a long taskbar on the bottom of the desktop. And so, you know, it's still, we have some apps that are pinned to our taskbar, but it doesn't look too weird, does it? But let's say I went and did this. So I can hold down the settings application right here, and I can bring it, put it on the side right there, and bam, I can have two windows open at the same time in Android, and it's so easy to have them open side by side. You just hold it and you pull it. And I could switch out a different application. So I could take in Firefox, switch it out with the Files application, and bam, the Files application is gone. And now I have Firefox open right here instead of the Files application that just was open. And I can close this, and as you can see, kind of like iPad OS keeps the two windows together, this also does the same thing. So if I were to go and open up the Files application here, I have it open here. And as you can see, if I can go back to these, open side by side, like it just stores them together. And if I wanted to close just one, I'm not really sure how to do that honestly, because they seem to both close when I try to close them. But you know, that's one of the things that makes that this version of Android brings to the table, and it just improves multitasking quite a lot. So that is probably the biggest difference that I have noticed so far in this version of Android, is that taskbar on the bottom and being able to open up the side-by-side applications. But next, we do have some more changes in the settings application, but if you were interested to see if this really is Android 12, you can see right here, this is Lineage OS 19.1, which is Android 12L. So there you guys, you got some confirmation there. But if we go to system right here, we can see that down here we're going to have this thing right here that says Raspberry Pi settings. So we have a specific settings little part built in for the Raspberry Pi 4 that I assume Konstakang built in, which is honestly really useful. So you can change your audio device right here to something that you want. You can change your display resolution. I'm going to leave it at 1920 by 1080 right now. So we'll exit there. We have display rotation, force rotation. You can enable touchscreen for official Raspberry Pi 7-inch touchscreen. That's interesting. You can change this, infrared remote, and there's just some different settings in here. But you can actually overclock your Raspberry Pi 4 directly from the settings included inside of this version of Android. I think this was built into other versions as well, but it's cool to see. So I could click, if I wanted 2000 megahertz, I click that, and I assume that on my next reboot that would change. But I want to show you guys the default performance, so I'm going to leave it at 1500. And you can CPU governor. You can change that too if you like. You can enable SSH, ADB, VNC, different really cool stuff like that. But this is something that is really cool. It has hardware video decoding. Enable experimental H.264 hardware video decoding on the Raspberry Pi 4. So this is something that I thought was interesting, and he actually states that it is very, he doesn't say very, but it is experimental on his website, so you could experience some issues with this. And I will be showcasing this in a little bit, but it's cool to see that pre-included in this version of Android. So that's about it for the settings application. What about if we went into the web browser, tried to do some video web browsing, tried to go into YouTube and do some video playback? How does that perform? So I did install Firefox myself through the Google Play services, and I will be showing how to install Google Play 2 in a little bit, or you can go down to that timestamp and get straight to that point. But as you can see, does it load up pretty fast? Yeah. Is it scrolling? Honestly, the scrolling seems pretty nice. It seems fairly fluid, maybe even better than some desktop operating systems on the Raspberry Pi 4. There is a little bit of lag, as you can see right there, so maybe not the best, but it's a little bit different since this is supposed to be a mobile operating system, not meant for desktop usage, but it does work with desktop too. And if you were using a touchscreen, you click right here and you can get a keyboard. You could show the virtual keyboard like that too. So web browsing, are you gonna be fine by using this for web browsing? Sure, it is gonna do the job okay. It's not the greatest experience that I've ever had, and it's not the worst either. Yeah, it's gonna get the job done. Maybe if you use a different browser, you could get better performance too. But for this video, I'll be using Firefox. As for video playback, so I did try turning on that hardware video acceleration in the settings, and when I tried to play videos, it was honestly kind of bad. There was like green lines going through my screen. That was definitely not how you're going to want to watch a video on your Raspberry Pi. So as you can see, it probably is definitely experimental. Not probably, it is experimental, so you are going to be running into some issues. But hopefully in further releases, that experimentalness will go away, and we can have proper hardware video acceleration on our Raspberry Pi. But right here, I'll go to quality, I'll go to advanced, and I'll set it to 1080p 60. We'll try watching this video in 1080p 60, and I'm going to tell you guys, it's not going to be the greatest experience for sure. And if I go to right here to go stats for nerds, you see it tries to show up, but then it just goes away. So I'm not really sure what's wrong with stats for nerds either. As you can see, it doesn't feel very fluid. It just like, I probably wouldn't want to watch this like this. It looks laggy. It just looks like it's kind of sluggish and tearing. That's why I probably would not try to watch 1080p on this type of version of Android right now. It is 1080p 60 this video, but we'll go back to 720p 60, and this is going to be better, I think. And yeah, I can already tell that feels a lot better. Yeah, that's a lot nicer. You're going to have a much better experience by just using 720p rather than trying to force the Raspberry Pi to do 1080p without proper video acceleration support. It's just better to stick to 720p even if it is a lower resolution. So that's about it for there. Now, what about testing out some games? So first of all, let's test out Minecraft Trial. Okay, so here we are in Minecraft, and I personally don't play this game so much, so I don't know too much about the settings and stuff like that, but I did turn off some fancy graphics, rendering the clouds, and some other settings, but even with that, as you can see, it's just not the greatest experience. Turning around, it feels a little bit laggy, and is this playable? I mean, you could say yeah, but it's still not the greatest experience on this version of Android, which is a little bit sad. I wish it did run a little bit better. But this is Minecraft for you on Android 12L. Okay, so here we are with Asphalt 9 on Android 12L on our Raspberry Pi, and I'm not sure how lightweight of a game this actually is, but as you can see, it's a very stuttery on our Raspberry Pi, and definitely not very enjoyable if you were wanting to play this on here. Like, it's not very good at all. But Raspberry Pi and Android have never had great support, so I don't really think this is something directly connected to this version of Android. I could be wrong, but I doubt that this game ran so well in other versions either. So it's just something you have to kind of live with the Raspberry Pi and these versions of Android. Okay, so as for the last game, I want to take a look at Hill Climb Racing, and as you can see, this definitely is not a very heavy game, and it runs perfectly fine on this version of Android, and it runs on other single board computers, such as the Redux Zero, perfectly well too, as I've tested before. So this game, like, you're going to be fine running lightweight games on this version of Android, but harder games such as Asphalt 9, as you saw, or even Minecraft, are going to be just a little bit more stuttery and harder to run overall. So overall, the new, like, desktop experience with this version of Android is kind of cool. I enjoy being able to have multiple apps open and being able to multitask by putting two apps side by side. That definitely is a really cool feature. And I do enjoy that Google Play is supported on this version of Android. There are a few couple things that you do need to tweak, which I will be showing a little bit later. But overall, Android 12 definitely is a nice and beautiful UI. I like this control center right here, but changing the screen brightness, it doesn't seem to work on my current setup. So, there are just little finicky things like that, and hopefully that video acceleration thing does get worked out and it gets out of experimental. If it does, I could see watching videos and stuff like that could get a lot better on this version of Android. But that's enough of showing you guys what it looks like and testing some stuff. Let's dive into how to install this yourself on your Raspberry Pi 4, since that might be something you're want to do. Okay, so while installing this version of Android 12L isn't hard on the Raspberry Pi, I would watch closely because there are some different things that you're going to want to do when installing the Google App Store on this version of Android. So first of all, we are going to want to download the version of Android. So go to this website here. All these links will be in the description below, but go over right here to Lineage 19.1 unofficial Konstakang RPI4 zip. Go right here, open link in new tab, and just click to start the download. It's going to find a proper mirror for you, and from there just basically download that image file. You don't need to unzip it, just leave it in that zip file. So just download it from right here. Okay. Once you have that downloaded, you're going to want to open up the Raspberry Pi Imager, which you can also install on all 3 operating systems. So make sure that that is open right here and go choose OS, scroll down, go used custom, and I'm going to search for Konstakang. Well, I'll just look right here. So I'm going to want Lineage 19.1 unofficial Konstakang. Make sure that you're selecting the Lineage 19.1 that you just downloaded. Select that, click open. Choose storage, choose your USB stick or SD card. There is some extra configuration needed for a USB stick, so watch closely because I am also doing it on a USB stick. So I'm going to click yes. So that is going to start writing it to our USB stick. So this will depend on the speeds of your disk you're writing to, but just be patient, go get some coffee, go do something, let this thing write to your disk. Okay, so once you see this right here in the Raspberry Pi Imager, you can see that it says you can now remove the SD card from the reader. So I'm going to click continue, and so for those of you who were looking to USB boot, unplug your USB drive from your computer, plug it back into your computer. Once you hear that sound, we're going to open up our File Explorer right here, and we're going to want to go to where it says boot. Click that and go to the config.txt because we're going to have to edit some settings in here. So right here where it says boot device, you can see by default it's going to Android SD card, and our Android USB drive is hashtagged. So unhashtag that right there and put the hashtag on the SD card. So now by default it is going to boot to USB rather than SD card. So make sure to change that setting if you were looking to boot from USB. So click File, click Save, and bam, we have that done now. But if you are looking to boot or install Google Play on this version of Android, I would really recommend following these steps right here. So first of all, for the Google Apps package, we're going to be using this service called NicGapps. And this is going to be a custom Google Apps package that just gives us the Google Play Store and the Google services. So click download right here, or you can go straight to this link that I will leave down in the description. We are going to want to go right here to where it says the NicGapps Core ARM64, and 12 is for Android 12. So you're going to want to download that right here. And for this process, you are going to want to have a separate USB drive or USB stick to throw this file on so that we can install it on our version of Android. So make sure that you do have a separate USB drive that you can plug into your computer to copy this version of NicGapps over to that drive. Okay, so you can see NitGapps is almost installed right there or downloaded. But first, when we boot up into this version of Android, we are not going to have full access to the full space of our drive. Like, we're going to only have access to 8 gigabytes, even if our storage is 64 or 128. So that's why we need to use this thing right here called the Lineage 19.1 RPI resize.zip. This is again from Konstakang. You can find it right here if you scroll down to right here, simply my resize zip. So make sure you click that link right there, click open link in new tab, and we're going to want to download this Lineage 19.1 RPI resize, and you're just going to want to throw this on to that same USB stick. Throw this onto that USB stick, and throw the NitGapps onto the same USB stick, and you can unplug that USB stick, and we'll use that in a little bit later on our Raspberry Pi. Okay, so you're basically just going to want to plug in your USB stick or SD card or whatever you're booting off from on into your Raspberry Pi, plug it in, bam, you're going to be welcomed with a screen like this, and it says Lineage right here. So click Start, and it's going to give us the setup process. So you can't use this for commercial use. Click Accept, and choose your language right there, and date and time, choose that as well. I'm just going to hit Next, and I'm going to connect to my Wi-Fi network real fast. After connected to a network, this also will work with Ethernet as far as I'm concerned. We're going to click Next, and location services, you can turn those off if you want. Lineage OS features, I'll leave them on. Protect your tablet. I personally don't really find it necessary to have a pin on my Raspberry Pi, so I'm going to leave that off. I don't want to restore any data, and here we go, start. Here we go, guys. We have the Android 12L desktop experience on our Raspberry Pi, and you see it is pretty bare bones, and we don't come pre-installed with any app store. Well, that's why in the last step I showed you guys how to download NitGapps. So now you're going to want to plug in your external USB stick or any drive that you use to copy over the NitGapps and the expander file. Plug that USB drive into your Raspberry Pi right now, and we're going to want to open up the Files application. And in the Files application, find your USB drive right here. This is mine. It's kind of large, but here. So you're gonna want to find NitGapps core, the one that we did. So I'm gonna hit Control NitGapps, and I'm gonna copy the Lineage 19.1 expander file right here, and we're gonna just drag and drop this to where it says Raspberry Pi. I think it's just easier to have it copied over to our main SD card or USB stick rather than trying to find this later on. Okay, so here we have both of them copied over right now. We have both of the necessary files, but we are going to need to boot into recovery to install these. And well, how do you do that? We're going to have to first open up the settings application on your Raspberry Pi. There was a little glitch right there. So go ahead, open up the settings application. And here we go, guys. We have this little thing right here, and it's giving you some information about how to use the taskbar to switch apps. I'm not going to go through this right now, but you can if you were interested. So in the settings, basically hit this search settings icon right here, and just search for the setting that says restart. And there we go, advanced restart. We're going to want to turn on advanced restart. Scroll down to advanced restart, and that's basically all we need to do. But if you may ask, well, why do we need to expand our storage? I explained it earlier, but again, right here, if we go to storage, you can see right now that we only have 8 gigabytes total, but I know that my USB stick has a capacity of 64 gigs. So that file that we're going to use to expand our storage is going to allow us to use the full capacity of our drive. So that is why it's important. But yeah, so we have that setting enabled now. So basically all we have to do is swipe up from the top right here, click this button right here to restart, click restart, and we're going to want to restart into recovery. That's important. So restart into the recovery environment. Okay, so here we are in the recovery part of this version of Android, and be aware, the first time you do it, it may not boot straight into recovery. Like mine just booted straight back into the Android desktop rather than going to recovery, so I had to reboot it into do that thing that I did last time one more time, but now I am in the recovery environment. So first of all, we're going to want to hit install right here, click install, and here we have it, guys. In our SD card, we have the two files that we copied over to our USB stick or SD card. So first of all, we are going to want to resize our Lineage OS. So click this one right here and just swipe to confirm flash. And now this is going to resize our data partition so we can use all of the data inside of it. And I'm just going to wipe the Dalvik after it. wipe the Dalvik, bam. Okay, now we're going to want to click this home icon again and click install one more time, and now we're going to flash the NetGap's Core ARM64. Just swipe to confirm flash again, and now this is going to install Google Play on this version of Android, so we have all the nice Google applications and we can use the really awesome Google Play App Store. Okay, so now that that is done, we can now wipe the Dalvik one more time for the NetGaps, wipe that there, and basically we are almost done. So let this finish updating, and now we're just gonna hit reboot the system, reboot our Android experience, and bam, we will be welcomed with our Android 9 desktop with Google Play installed. Okay, so if I were to swipe up right now after the reboot, now we have the Google Play Store installed on our system. But before launching it, there is something that you need to enable from the settings. That is a little bit strange that you have to, but we're just going to do it to make sure that this process works correctly. So open up the settings application right here and go down to where it says apps right here. Click the apps, start right here, go to all apps. Scroll down until you find the Google Play Store, not services, the Google Play Store. And click mobile data and Wi-Fi and turn in allow network access. So by default, this doesn't have access to the network, so it's not going to work correctly, obviously. That's a little bit strange why it doesn't, but just make sure that that is enabled right there. And then now we are ready to open up Google Play and try to log in. Okay, so here we have Google Play, so I'm going to click it right here. And it might be a little bit finicky at the beginning. And oh, here we go. You can see it's going to start loading us into the sign in page right here. So click sign in. And it might be a little bit slow at first, but just be patient. Don't try to rush things or you possibly could mess up the whole installation. Okay, so here in the settings, we're going to start to log in with our Google account. I'm not going to show this part, obviously, but just go ahead and log in with everything that you want to log in with, and you'll be good. And you know, right now, for me, it's still saying getting account info, and it has been a little bit. I've cut out parts, obviously, but just be patient. Let this thing hopefully work itself out, because it's a little bit finicky. But just let it do its thing. So right here, I got this prompt right here that says Google Play services isn't responding. I'm gonna hit wait and hope that it's gonna continue to work. Last time it did. Hopefully it does right now. Okay, so there we go, guys. I hit wait, and as you can see, it just took a little bit of time, but now I'm in the last part of the settings. So I personally don't want to back up anything. I'm gonna hit accept. So like I said, just be patient. Hope that this thing is working, even if it doesn't look like it is. Just don't hurry and try to close things. Just let it do its thing. Okay, guys, so here we have Google Play installed on Android 12L on our Raspberry Pi with this nice interface, and we can open up Google Play and we have access to all of these applications, and you could install whatever one you want to, but of course it might not perform as intended. Okay, also, I hope this video was helpful with you guys knowing how to install this on your Raspberry Pi 4, get Google Play up and running, and just get an overview of what this version of Android brings, what it performs, how it performs on the Raspberry Pi 4, and some different stuff like that. So any questions about it, hit me up in the comments below. A like to the video would be incredible, and a subscribe to the channel would be spectacular. Thanks for watching!